MovieWeb.com.
Okay, now for your character, I thought it was really interesting that you have this trait where you do not really make eye contact a lot of the time with the other characters, and I'm wondering if that was really a trait of Jim Barrett, or if that was something you kind of brought into it yourself.
Oh, that's very interesting, Already. Where I guess as a person, I look at people when I'm talking to them, and I was aware when I was watching the movie, I thought, I wonder if these are just the cuts, the takes that he took, or what. But I think there was also some sign of, I think Jim does have this kind of like radar on things that aren't necessarily happening in the here and now, but what he really wants to happen, or what he's about to say, or whatever, and maybe that filtered in.
So he's like pre-thinking in the future.
Well, he's kind of
like always
thinking about what he wants to say. It's a little bit of illusion of the central position, I guess.
So, well, I was going to ask you, I thought maybe it was a little bit weird to have that on set, because a lot of times, you don't really see that in other movies where people, they're always eye contact, so I thought maybe that would be different for an actor to have that going on when the other character's kind of like in...
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. I think what you hit upon is that in our relationship in the film, you know, there's a complete disconnection between father and son, and I think I didn't really register it specifically while we were working, but certainly, you know, what I'm trying to do in the film is get my father to look at me and kind of recognize me as a person rather than as this kind of flunky washout kid, and I think it definitely speaks to you know, what Bill found in the role, and definitely what he said about Jim. There is a certain amount of Jim's you know, when he said, you know, at the end of the film, it was, you know, kids from the sticks. It's that kind of mentality of getting over that hardship of coming up to this winery in the beginning of the 70s and making something out of nothing. There's an intense amount of determination and will that is kind of self-involved. It's very specific, and you know, you can't.
And he doesn't want to be embarrassed either.
Yeah.
You know, that generation of people that didn't want to be vulnerable enough to, like, eye contact means that you're listening and you're vulnerable and things might not go. But and you could be embarrassed in some way. And he didn't want to, he never wanted to be embarrassed about his efforts or how good he was or anything. So, generational thing.
Okay, now I want to know, I've been on a vineyard before, and the grape tenders are really, like, get angry if you mess up the grapes. I'm wondering what it was like to bring all this crew and all you guys in there. I mean, did you have to go through special courses to be careful of like what was on the vine at the time and that kind of stuff?
You know, it's a great mix of cultures there too. I mean, there's you know, there's a lot of white people and there's a lot of Hispanic people, and a lot of the, you know, Latinos really know how the wine has been made through a lot of generations, and that is part of our story. But a lot of that, I love all the extras were guys who had worked on in vineyards, and it was really interesting exchange. There's kind of like there's equal playing field there, and a lot of respect for each other in what they do. You know, there's. And so I think I've always loved the way that to ask them, how would you clear the leaves away from this cluster of grapes? How would you, how do you use your knife? How do you hold it in your hand? You know, those kind of really specifics that are part of this subculture of making wine. And it's kind of interesting the fact that it's been this kind of symbiotic relationship of these cultures for a long time.
Lately, I've been doing a lot of interviews with people who've done recreational, you know, drug movies. And the one question is, did you smoke pot while you're making this movie? Did you smoke beer while you're making this movie? But with wine, it seems like wine's a more classy thing, and it's almost okay to say you were drinking wine while you're making the movie. I mean, do you kind of feel that way about that whole culture?
Absolutely. I think there's wine probably versus any other whatever recreational drug or whatever. It's like an intellectual part to it. So there's a whole. It's not you're not only drinking wine, you're discussing it, and there's, you know, you can go to there's a place in my neighborhood where you can have wine tastings and wines paired with food and cheeses. So there, you know, I think to say that you drink wine sometimes there's a certain amount of you know, people, there's a respect to it because for some reason it's considered intelligent or, which it is because there's a tremendous complexity to it that I never really understood.
But isn't it still true that Americans really don't drink that much wine compared to other countries?
Yeah,
That
I
they're-
think so.
I think
that's
you know.
what I see.
I mean, we'd like to think that everybody's hip to this sophisticated wine thing, but there's still a lot of people just sticking with beer.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll convert them with this movie.
I'm one of those guilty of that. I stick with beer.
Bottle shock.
Why don't I like you?
Because you think I'm an ass, and I'm not really. I'm just British, and, well, you're not.